Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Dr. Tony McNeil here. I hope all of you are doing well and enjoying your Sunday. Uh, I am thrilled to host this broadcast today. I have two very wonderful friends and colleagues of mine that I would like to showcase today in this conversation about an innovative project that they have available for churches who are within close proximity of a college or university. And this project is called the Vinery. And I see you all logging in. Come on in, come on in, come on in the room, into the room. Let me know where you are joining the conversation from. Say hello, and let me know where you're joining from and what church or organization you might be representing. Happy Sunday. And as you come in, if you want to tag a pastor or minister of music or youth and young adult pastor about the broadcast, we would greatly appreciate it. I see my colleague, Dr. Montisa Watkins, who has joined us. Good evening to you. Hello, everybody. Hello. Say hello as you're coming in and let me know where you are joining from. We are delighted, or I am delighted, to be the host of this conversation tonight. Um, just wanted to share with those of you who follow me on Facebook and Instagram and on TikTok uh, the good news of this ministry initiative called the Vinery. It is a wonderful opportunity for churches, for congregations who are within a close proximity of a college and university. And I have two great people that I am going to go ahead and bring to the forefront. I see folks saying hello. Yes. Hello, Reverend Danielle Dufault. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Dr. Montisa, thank you so much for joining. Uh, Good to see both of you. Good to see both of you. And others of you are joining. I see Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church from Albany, Georgia. Welcome. My good friend Christopher Watkins from Houston, Texas. I see Jennifer Ankrum from Rock Hill, representing Herman Presbyterian Church. And there are others of you. Come on in. Please share, tag, share, like, do all of the things to bring others into this conversation. Okay, so let me introduce my special guests, and I'm going to bring them on. Uh, Dr. Alexis Carter Thomas and Reverend Rhymes McElveen. These two folks are at the helm of this incredible ministry called the Vinery. And I had the chance of being introduced to Rhymes through my involvement with FTE and Reverend Darlene Hutto. And as a result of me meeting Rhymes at FTE, he invited me to come and lead worship for the Vinery. And through that, I met Dr. Alexis Carter Thomas and have been serving alongside them for the past 2 years. And I wanted to share the news of what they're doing with my friends, with those that follow me and support my ministry, and with the hopes of um, being aware of this ministry and sharing the good news of it with others, and having you guys to also spread the news to folks that you're connected with. So I'm going to pause right here and allow each of them to tell you who they are personally and individually and how they got connected to the Vinery. And then we're going to watch a short video. So, ladies first, the relatively newly minted Dr. Alexis Carter Thomas. Welcome to the conversation. And just tell us a little bit about yourself, your ministry, your background, and how you got connected to the Vinery.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Tony. Thanks for having us today and featuring the Vinery. As said, I'm the newly minted Reverend Dr. Alexis Carter Thomas, as of May 12th this year. And I am the program director for the Vinery. So for the past 2.5 years, I've had the pleasure of dreaming, collaborating, leading this effort with Rhymes and the rest of our staff. It has been a joy to come alongside congregations doing this good work, which we'll tell you more about shortly. And when I'm not doing this, I'm doing other consulting, writing, preaching, and my main work is supporting the thriving of Black clergy women in a variety of sectors. So I'm really glad to be here tonight.
Thank you, Alexis. Reverend Rhymes, how you doing, man?
I'm better now that I'm with y'all and with everyone else in the StreamYard gathering. This is fantastic. So all I can say is it's a joy and a privilege to be with you all, to be with you, Dr. T. I love working with you. I love working with Alexis. I'm the executive director of Mere Christianity Forum, which is a collegiate ministry at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And I've been in that role for about 16 years now. And 3 years ago, we received a grant from the Lilly Endowment to create the Vinery to support congregations near universities who want to establish, expand, or revitalize their university ministry footprint with their neighboring universities. And so it's incredibly engaging and encouraging work. We love seeing congregations come alive and flourish in ministry with their university neighbors. And I love to get to do this work with Alexis all the time, and with you, Dr. T, when we get to worship with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, everybody, before we dive into our conversation, I want to share with you a brief video. So let's hope this is going to work. It worked in the little sound check. We're going to go to the video now.
The Lilly Endowment created an initiative called the Thriving Congregations Initiative, in which they're looking for folks who have ideas about how to help local churches thrive in ministry. And so we said, we really see an opportunity to help mend the broken and torn fabric of American society by helping colleges and congregations rediscover their overlapping concern for human flourishing in the name of Jesus. And so we created this initiative called the Vinery.
The Vinery is for congregations that are in close proximity to a college or university, and that sense a call to deepen that relationship for the common good.
We chose to use Marshall Gann's public narrative framework, and we believe that utilizing this framework and helping a congregation do the self-exploration and the self-reflection and the discernment around their own story as a congregation, it's naturally going to bring up transformational experiences.
We are committed to churches that want to do the work to be a place of radical welcome for young adults, college students, and the university community.
Our goal is to introduce students to faithful and healthy expressions of Christian faithfulness across the Christian spectrum.
The 24-month cohort looks like kicking off at the beginning of the year with an annual Vinery gathering in which all of the cohorts come together for worship, for learning, for encouragement. The 3 goals of the annual gathering are to learn the Vinery process, deep listening, and connection, and we see those fulfilled. The Vinery will help them be more faithful and authentic to who they are. We hope that congregations begin to see being faithful means being attuned to the needs of those in our community, being attuned to the resources that we have to meet those needs and how God might be calling us to meet those needs. We really hope that part of the listening is that in the cohort they learn, we're handing them an invitation to take a journey, whereas if they do the work, we believe they will be successful.
Ooh, that boy needed a haircut and a shave, didn't he? That was like last week when we did that video.
Oh my goodness. That is a wonderful summary of the beauty of the work that you all do for congregations, and I am thrilled to be here to talk more about it. Rhymes or Alexis, it doesn't matter. Where did the idea of the Vinery come from? And how did it get started? Did you approach Lily, or did Lily approach you? How did all of this come about?
I wish I could say that Lily approached me. I don't know. I mean, we do some hard work here and there, but I don't know that they'd come calling necessarily. No, honestly, it was through longer conversations. I did have the chance to consult with them on their CMTEV, the Collegiate Ministries Theological Exploration Vocation Network, where they were supporting campus ministries across the United States on public university campuses. So I consulted with them on that initiative for about 4 or 5 years. And I think Dr. T, you were one of the worship leaders in some of those gatherings. That's where actually I met Alexis, who was one of the collegiate ministry leaders at a congregation out in Oklahoma. And so we had the chance to kind of collaborate while we were in contact, and we just sort of planted some seeds with each other. Hey, be great to work with each other in the future. And then I asked Alexis to consider helping write the grant for their Thriving Congregations Grant Initiative. And then like 6 or 7 months later, we found out we got the grant, and we said, this is awesome, let's get to it. So that really was it. But for me, being in collegiate ministry for 16 or 17 years now, I just often see how students are longing for things that congregations can naturally offer them. And I see congregations longing for the presence of young adults in their midst, particularly 17 to 25-year-olds, and struggling to find ways to connect well kind of from both sides of that equation. And so Alexis and I have sort of worked hard to try and develop a process to help congregations take care of that equation from their side of the street, so to speak, and to say, what can congregations do creatively to discern God's will for their congregation in relationship to their university neighbor for the next epoch of ministry in their locale. So that was really it, just seeing a desire. We really do believe that when churches are healthy and colleges are healthy, and there's a strong overlap in that relationship, that can really help mend American society. There's important learning and collaboration that happens there. And so we feel like it's a mutually beneficial kind of experience when congregations are healthy and thriving in relationship to their university neighbors.
Oh, wow. That is very, very important work. And, that's on the minds of a lot of congregations, how to connect with young adults. That is a priority for a lot of worship spaces and a lot of congregations who are seeking to revitalize worship, to revitalize their sense of purpose and their sense of connection to the congregation. What kinds of churches would be best served by applying for the Vinery? Alexis, could you talk to us about what kinds of churches would be best served and the process that a church goes through to apply to become connected to this project?
Sure. So we at the Vinery say we have 3 key pillars of readiness for congregations: priority, proximity, and capacity. Proximity within a mile or 2 of a university or college. Capacity, they have resources, personnel, people willing to engage in the work with the congregation, that it's not just some one lone pastor who sees the vision for the campus, but it really is a desire of leadership to become a congregational church where the wider church catches the vision. And priority, which you just named and is essential. We'd like to think more churches have priority for young adults, but that's not always the case. I mean, sadly, I was talking to a congregation last week that their assessment lately has been that their pastors spend too much time with young adults and they need to spend more time with older congregations.
Wow.
And with older congregants, and that they should, and The pastor, from my understanding, does, but they feel like we don't actually really want to bridge to the university. We don't want to do that kind of work. We're happy with the older congregants here. And so it is still surprising to me, congregations that don't want to prioritize and don't realize the vibrancy and the life-giving power of prioritizing university ministry, of the power of intergenerational relationships, as Rhymes named, what congregations have to offer. And what universities have to offer congregations, that the partnerships really, we believe, can repair some of the broken things in American life through these key pillars in a community working together. And so not just student ministry, but ministry of the congregation and ministry of the campus community that includes faculty, staff, administration, alumni. And so around proximity, as I said, few miles within a university, especially if a college or university is in their backyard. If you can stand on your church steps and you can see a college or university, there's a call to be better neighbors to them, to know that community. Priority, it needs to be a goal within their strategic plans. Not that that always happens initially when a church joins the Vinery, but we ask that they work towards including university ministry in their 3 to 5 year strategic plan as a congregation, where the congregation really owns that identity and sees really a call and how the Spirit is leading them to build relationships and to engage with their university and capacity, that they have the staff, volunteer facilities, financial ability to engage in this sort of work.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. I love the fact that you're emphasizing the need for the congregation to be fully vested in the process, and not this just be the vision of a youth pastor or a young adult minister or community outreach person. And oftentimes that means, to be fully vested means not only to say we're going to do this, but also put your money behind it. Also, that it's reflected in the budget. And I often tell people that if you really want to know where a church's priorities are, look at the budget. Look
Yes.
at the budget. So having the this be a part of, I love what you said. You said that a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, 3 to 5 year strategic plan of the church, and not just this one-off thing.
Yes.
That this is a long-term investment and a long-term desire and priority of the congregation.
Yes. And also, Dr. Tony, it's important that the congregation wants to do the work. Like, part of the Vinery 2-year cohort is that there is work involved in our processes of deep listening and purposeful design, which are our larger overarching vision and commitment around our mission is deep listening, purposeful design. And sometimes congregations want young adults, or they feel a call to prioritize that. But the hard work of deep listening, of listening to across generational divide, of listening to the context of the college or university that's neighboring them, where are the gaps and where are the needs, and where are they not just trying to reproduce campus ministry that's already being done, but where are they really listening? Are they learning about housing and food insecurity? Are they really learning about the needs of their neighbors? And in that, we really trust that the Spirit to lead, and that they will do the design work that is needed for their congregation in that community. Because that's really that is the hard work that we see congregations that want to be public facing. They want to say publicly that they're prioritizing this, and they have certain flags outside, but they haven't done the work to be hospitable and loving towards young adults. And so we seek to help with that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What, and I heard you allude to the 2-year commitment. If a congregation is accepted into the program, it is a 2-year commitment. And Rhymes, you can jump in on this too. What happens across those 2 years? What could a church expect during that time frame? Or what are expectations of them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll throw out some of the framework, and then Alexis, feel free to fill in. You know, part of why we feel like 2 years is a good length of time is because to do much transformational work within a congregation usually takes at least that to get it going.
Mm.
Now, I may be speaking from my own experience in congregational life, and all the congregations represented on this call may be a lot more nimble and a lot more adaptive and can implement whole programs in 6 months or less. But in my experience, it usually takes a minute to get folks signed on, enlisted, grow some trust, grow some budget line item prioritization, and then develop some plans, get the strategic vision in place, do the relational outreach to sort of seed what's going to happen before it actually takes place. And so we feel like really it's important to take a narrative approach. And so we invite our congregations to go on a journey of developing what Marshall Gans calls their public narrative, what we call a Vinery public narrative, which is to say their congregation's story of flourishing in ministry with university neighbors. So that at the end of the 2 years, they've developed the story of self, which is the story of their congregation. It's theological distinctives, it's wins and losses, it's places that it has failed the university, places that it has successfully reached the university, and the story of us, what who their university really is now, not at some previous point, who their congregation is now, not at some previous point, so that they can then discern the story of now, which is to say, what God is calling their congregation to do in ministry relationship with their university neighbors for the next 3, 5, 15 years. So that requires this kind of process of deep listening, as Alexis referred to, and then a process of purposeful design, which includes work around human-centered design, asset-based community development, and Christian discernment practices for individuals and institutions. And so by engaging in those practices, they conceive of their Vinery public narrative, the story of self, us, and now. And then they move into the implementation phase of the work, sort of launching at the end of year 2 or at the start of year 3. We gather in January as a full cohort, and that's about 50 folks. So each congregation has a Vinery lead team, a clergy or staff person, a young adult, and a lay leader. And those 3 people constitute each church's initial Vinery lead team. And we hope that those lead teams eventually become kind of a seed crystal around which a whole team or committee or task force will kind of grow. And that at the end of that 2 years, they'll have a kind of a critical mass of leaders in their church committed to this ongoing work. And so then the Vinery lead team from each congregation comes together for a cohort gathering, and that's annually in January each year. At the 6-month mark, a Vinery lead team from one congregation goes and does a site visit at their Vinery partner church location, so they can learn and help that church refine its vision. So you get a Vinery partner church that accompanies you throughout the 2-year process. So you have another congregation that you're bouncing ideas off of, that you're helping them refine their emerging vision of God's call on their congregation. They're helping you develop and discern your emerging calling for God on your congregation. I mean, you have a buddy church, essentially. And so you do a site visit of Church A goes to Church B in year 1, Church B goes to Church A in year 2. And then we have monthly Zoom calls that are peer learning cohort-based calls each of the other months throughout that 24-month period. We bring in subject matter experts, practitioners, congregational leadership, gurus, and all kind of stuff to help with each step of the way that's laid out for the congregations 1 month at a time as a part of our almanac. So we have a 24-month almanac that's sort of the guidebook to how to seed, cultivate, nurture, and bear faithful fruit.
Wow, that sounds like a rewarding but
sorry,
yet
sorry, it's a longer answer.
full
Longer
calendar
answer.
of
Yeah.
activities and uh, engagement and relationship building, not only within the church university community, but I also love the fact that another peer church comes along in the process to help guide the journey. So that's wonderful. That is so wonderful. I want to welcome those of you that are just joining and uh, say that we are here talking with Dr. Alexis Carter Thomas and Reverend Rhymes McElveen about the Vinery, which is a wonderful initiative that is funded through the Lilly Foundation that brings together churches and proximate universities and colleges and helps to promote this sense of connection and being better neighbors. And your church, if it's within what is it, a 1, 2, 3 mile radius,
Yeah, 1 to 2
10 minute,
is ideal.
1 to 2 is ideal. Okay. Uh, Radius of a college or a university, you're eligible to apply for this opportunity to be funded, to receive funds, to help you be better neighbors with your college or university that is in your backyard. Um, Alexis, talk to us about the churches who have participated and are participating in the Vinery. What are some of the successes and challenges that you and Rhymes have witnessed since the beginning of this program?
Great question. I'll build on what Rhyme said previously about the 2-year cohort. I think some of the challenges are it's a long game, and it's not even 2 year. Most congregations aren't overhauling their young adult or university ministry in the
Mm-hmm.
2 years. They're really beginning to do, in the Vineries, we say tilling the soil. They're unearthing, they're digging up, they're learning to tell better stories. And especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and just changes in recent years, socially, politically, some churches are just learning to say who they are. I mean, if we're honest, right? They're learning to tell stories about themselves that are true and authentic in order to figure out who they are in their communities. And so part of it is the storytelling, the challenge in storytelling, to hear Vinery lead teams where if we were a Vinery lead team of 3, the story that I tell about our congregation might be different for Rhymes based on his life, race, gender, experience with leadership. And so sometimes it's in the challenging moments of being honest and telling stories that are true to us that we realize not everyone views our congregation like we do. Not everybody's experiences are the same. What we think may be a hospitable, warm congregation may need some work in some areas. So I would say some of the challenges are getting the storytelling part, getting the public narrative right, in ways that say who you are for and tell a story that is true to the community, tell a story that is compelling to university communities, telling stories that help young people to know you exist and the university community as a whole to know you exist in a place that sees and values the presence and gifts of people in your university community. So I would say the storytelling part, the deep listening. We do a lot of work around listening. What are the needs, and have you taken time to really ask questions, generative questions about where the gaps are, what needs are not being met spiritually, financially, mentally in this campus community. And it is the Vinery League team and the board willing to listen. I would say one challenge that has come up or that Vinery lead teams that are enthusiastic about this work, who believe in building the relationships, who want to tell stories that are true, want to listen well to their neighbors, where that process takes them in ways that they cannot anticipate isn't always what the governing body of that church thought might happen. And
Wow.
so it can lead to unforeseeable, an unforeseeable journey of, we were open to where the Spirit might lead. We started asking questions. We deep listened. And now we realize that there's a group that meets on campus who doesn't necessarily share our faith tradition or beliefs, but needs a place to meet and eat. And we sense a call to open that up. And so I think some of the challenges are old school, traditional university ministries. Students are going to show up and have pizza and Bible study on Tuesdays. Not always the case in the Vinery process of discernment. That it could be pizza and Bible study, but it might be something completely different. You might be opening the congregation up or facilities up to, yoga and prayer on Saturday morning. I mean, and so we really invite congregations to be open and to listen well in a way that they might be surprised by the holy wonder that happens. And I think that can be challenging for congregations who feel like we signed up, we committed to university, we believe in it, but our idea about university ministry isn't what is yielding forth fruit. It's going to look different. I feel like that can be challenging for congregations, but when they're open to it, it's also beautiful. It's also really dynamic, and it allows them to show up and be vessels in their community in ways that needs aren't being met, that they are able to see them, to name them, and to be open to meeting needs in ways that really are a gift to the community.
That's wonderful. I just love the possibility of, having this idea of what you think this project could look like. And once you start the deep listening and the connection, to be surprised by the Holy Spirit in ways that are beautiful and life-giving and really formative for the congregation and for the university or college neighbor. That is so wonderful.
Sorry, Dr. Tony, one of that you asked for success stories. I think about one of our congregations in its second year who this month is starting something they've never done, but part of their discernment was something is not working quite right with our Wednesday night young adult service or college students. And they realized sororities and fraternities were meeting on Wednesdays. So for the first time ever, the congregation, after surveys and lots of discussion, are moving to a Sunday evening service. And so they will still do a more of a traditional abbreviated service with liturgy, but it will be student led, and there will be a meal after, and then college programming. And so the idea is that they're willing to prototype. They've done the human-centered design part, and they're willing to prototype and test something new, and not being afraid to say, well, if we create this Sunday service at 5 on, Sundays, we have to commit to it for, the next 5 years. They're saying, we're going to try this. This is what we hear students in the community is wanting, and now we're going to show up. And so I think those are successes when people are willing to listen well and design something that's being asked for, even when it might be very different from what has been done traditionally. And so we're excited about those kinds of possibilities.
Very good. Very good. Those of you that are joining, if you have questions for Dr. Alexis or Reverend Rhymes, please feel free to type those in the comment section. And I'd love for us to address some of those before we leave. Rhymes, can you talk to us about the proposal or the application process? What do you look at when a church says, hey, we have done the research on this project, we think that we'd like to apply? What are the things that your committee, you and Alexis and anybody else, what do you look at in the application?
That's an awesome question. I would say that, we covered this just a little bit in terms of the proximity, priority, and capacity. And, if a church is a little bit further away or something, we're not going to be sticklers about like measuring, is it 2 miles? Like,
right.
Is this a church that has a kind of a natural physical claim on this university or vice versa? I mean, there are university churches all over the country that have forgotten that, and it's just in their name, University Christian Church or University Baptist or, whatever. But so anyway, but is there a kind of a proximity that lends itself naturally that this church needs to be attentive to this part of their neighboring community and vice versa? The second, of course, is priority. Has this church said, you know what, for one reason or another, either we've never gotten around to doing university ministry, or we used to do it and we keep thinking it's going to spontaneously combust again, and it isn't spontaneously combusting, and so we're ready to get after it. Or a church that just says, whether we are, aren't, have, or haven't, we know that God expects this of us, and we're ready to do it, and we want to do that with intentionality, and with a cohort, with a community of colleagues that are also committed to this kind of ministry. And then capacity, if the church is like, 48 people and sort of not able to meet their mortgage right now and not sure of its future, that's probably not the best time to take on, like, can we serve a university well, unless the congregation has sensed that that's going to be their primary means and context of ministry, in which case it's such a priority for the congregation. It's sort of like we're putting all of our chips behind that. So, so each story for each congregation, each application is unique, and we try and take it as such. But the last piece is a little bit more theological in tone. We want to see a level of kind of theological awareness and dexterity, that congregations can be malleable enough to reach young adults, and for young adults to find that place to be accepting, affirming, be it racially or gender, sexuality, affirming of women in ministry. I mean, for instance, all kinds of things like that. So there's a little bit of a theological fit there that, some congregations are naturally predisposed to have theologies that are more conciliatory towards young adults, and others don't. So I'm kind of being delicate there, but just to say, like, is your congregation open theologically to receiving young adults and to connecting well with folks who may not look, talk, dress, have come up in the church, etc., know the code, right? Are they gonna know that they're off brand and off code when they step into your church, or are they gonna find a place that says, we may not know what's up with this, but we're glad you're here, and we want to figure this out together. So a little bit of kind of theological sensitivity and dexterity there.
Wonderful. Anything you'd like to add, Alexis?
Nope. Well said. Yeah.
To what Ram said? Okay. Very good. Very good. For those of you that are on, if you have questions for Dr. Alexis or Reverend Rhymes, if you will put those in the comments at this time, we're going to open the floor up for anybody that wants to pose a question. And while we're waiting for folks to possibly type questions in the comments, is there a deadline for applications, or are you accepting applications on an ongoing basis, or what? How does that work?
Great question. I think I would have to be 100% sure, but I think it's September 15th. Is
September 15th. Okay.
14th or 15th, something like that. Is kind of what the current deadline is. But we're encouraging folks to apply as soon as possible. But we feel like that, most of the time by around September 15th, folks have sort of set some intentions with their church for the following year, and they can be easily ready to go as the cohort begins in January 2024. And so it gives them some time to kind of identify a couple of key leaders to be a part of their Vinery lead team between then. And we have a fairly quick turnaround of 2 to 3 weeks of letting churches know.
Great.
We generally do interviews with each applicant. And we also are happy to do kind of conversations and interviews prior to you completing an application. The application, in many ways, is just to sort of help the church think through the fact that, there's something at stake, and whether or not you do this well, do it with intentionality, and take it seriously. So that's a lot of what it's about.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Are there any questions? I was hoping that there would be some questions. I don't see any in the chat.
We answered them all.
Maybe you did.
Thought too much. Sorry.
For those of you that would like to be in touch with the Vinery, I do want to share information with you. So if you haven't already gone to the website, I encourage you to do that. It's www.thevinery.org. You can also follow the Vinery here on Facebook at The Vinery, and on Instagram is at Vinery Network. Are you all located any other places? I think I tried to get all of them.
I think
Those are the ones that I know
I
about.
think we're technically on the network formerly known as Twitter. I think it's called X now, something, but that's not a primary place that we are doing lots of posting. But Instagram and Facebook are the two most easiest ways, and certainly the website too. I did see that Bethel has a question that says, do you only accept applications once a year? So I would say that in many ways the application process is rolling, but we do have a kind of a deadline that we prefer people to get their applications in for the cohort that's beginning in January each year, that kind of thing. But if someone's like, look, we don't have a church council meeting until September 20th, and can we get our application in after that? We can be flexible as long as there's communication. So we're just, we like to over communicate, as you can tell, Dr. T.
Yes.
So, just be in touch
Absolutely.
with us. We're easy to reach and always responsive, and love to receive questions and make connections and just be in dialogue, because we have found that a lot of congregations are in a state of trying to move towards readiness. And so sometimes we have conversations where congregations are like, we know we need to get there. We know we need to do the Vinery, but we're not quite ready for the Vinery. What kind of readiness rubric do you guys have to kind of help us get squared away so that we could be a fit next year? So we just enter into conversations, and sometimes we'll consult with those congregations, or with a judicatory. We're in relationship with, different Episcopal or Methodist judicatories or whoever, to just sort of say, there's this group of churches, we like to help them kind of move towards readiness. And so we can kind of come alongside and help in those ways too. I hope that answers your question at Bethel. But
yes, they said thank you. I think it did.
And then
and there's another question from Lauren Fields Behringer. It says, what is the let me post it. What is the rationale for a church being 1 to 2 miles away from the school?
That's a great question. The short answer is that's the congregations that we are focusing on early in our organization's existence. So we think it's wonderful that churches outside of that kind of radius want to be committed to university ministry. We think more of them should. We're just sort of starting by saying, if a church has a university essentially in its 1 to 2 mile radius, these are your neighbors. You don't have to wonder, should we be doing ministry with the university? I think that question's been answered by your physical proximity. So that's really it. It's not that, and it's mostly like if students are having to drive by, walk by, bike by, bus by your congregation on their way to or from or just around campus, and they see your church, do they know who you are? Are you well represented on campus? Does your church show up in a way that when they Google your name says, hey, we are a place for you, and you will be welcomed here if you are a 17 to 25-year-old trying to figure out if you even believe in God, or if God's going to be central to your journey. If you're looking for a home or starving for community, this is a place for you. So that's more the rationale, was we want to begin our work in our first 3 to 5 years of existence as a ministry to serve those churches that it's just sort of like, from our perspective, which is not sounding so humble right now, it's like, if you're within a mile or two of a university, you ought to be concerned about ministering to them. So that's the very blunt way to answer that. I'm sure Alexis would have had a gentler way of narrating that, but that was it. Then it looked like a couple more questions came in.
Yeah. Dr. Montisa Watkins says, I love Rhyme's language of theological dexterity. I think about how some churches that hold strongly held theological beliefs about race, gender, and sexual identity, ideas that may clash. What has been the Vinery's experience in addressing these issues with churches and students? That's a great question.
You want to jump on that, Reverend?
I'm curious how you would say that. I'll just say thank you, Montisa Watkins, for that question. I think that's a really helpful, way to say who we are. First, I think in the application process, I think these kinds of things come out, like, especially since I do a lot of the recruiting. I really am asking questions at the beginning when a church reaches out to us, or they'll ask about these kinds of things, or are we associated with the denomination, or they want details about our theological commitments. And I say things about race, gender, and sexual identity in ways that say, like, if your church has some very rigid, closed policies, the Vinery may not be the best place. Yet, I've also said to churches who really are committed to doing this work and trying to figure out who they are, that being in a cohort with other churches that are diverse in race, region, denomination may also help them get a better understanding of who they are and why other churches are the way they are. Like, for some, it really is like the only way they will talk and be in community with others who are not just like them. And so sometimes that can be important work. But also, one of my favorite language phrases of rhymes is, we don't believe in provocative partnerships. And there are enough of those in the world that we are not looking to proselytize, change people's theological views around race and identity. Now, if they have a priority and, meet the capacity, proximity pieces, and willing to do some learning and have a spiritual openness, theological dexterity, we can work with them. But we are clear that, like, these are some diverse cohorts. Our speakers are pretty strong in their convictions also. So know that if you do not share our views and an expansiveness theologically, you might find the friction that's created in our gatherings might, if you feel like that might inhibit the work, then we should know that up front. So I think that I do some gatekeeping in some good ways. I don't usually consider myself a gatekeeper, but when it comes to gathering, I think I do some good gatekeeping, that I address the issues up front before I receive an application. So usually by the time an application comes in, they know who we are and we know who they are. So that I don't think we're addressing these issues later with students. We're saying, be authentic here and do no harm.
And do no harm.
There's a phrase that is kind of floating around these days called clarity is care. And if a congregation, as the question was asked here for Montisa, I believe, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. I don't want to mess that up, so excuse me if I am. But clarity is care, and so if a church has a very clear theological position on issues of race and gender and sexual identity and leadership and all those kinds of things, it's really important for a church to just be clear about those things up front, rather than sort of committing the kind of bait and switch action for students who feel like, oh, these folks told me this place was for me and that I belonged, and then as soon as they found out that I was X, Y, or Z, they didn't want me anywhere near volunteer leadership, or even much less like being in a band, or helping with Vacation Bible School, or and all of a sudden I realized that, like, it was only for me if I wasn't me. And so it's those kinds of encounters that clarity is care, and so we encourage congregations to be clear about those theological commitments that they may possess, and that's fine, but that's what we want to try and avoid, is the kind of bait and switch experiences for young adults.
Thank you for that, Rhymes. And Alexis. We have another question from Bethel. Says, can you share a success story? Alexis, would you want to do that? I think you shared one earlier,
Yeah,
maybe.
I shared one about the church discerning, and I think the fact that we're in, our first cohort is now in the latter half of the what we call the fourth quarter of their season. That we're just now really, I mean, there's like moments of success along the way, but I feel like we're just now in a place of like seeing, okay, now congregations really are deepening the work and expanding. And I think one congregation that we're journeying with that has really committed to their university neighbors. And now they're in the midst of a pastoral change. I think I saw today on socials that their pastor of 15 years is leaving, or it was his last day today. And though the Vinery focuses on university ministry in the sense of flourishing with campus communities, I would say some of the success that I've also seen is when people take the Vinery work and the processes that we believe in and that we emphasize around deep listening and asking generative questions and apply that in other aspects of their church. It's
Hmm.
quite powerful. And so though this congregation is like has been in prioritizing university ministry and looking at being a pillar in their community where others, students who may not be welcome because of gender, sexuality, and beliefs may not be welcome in many churches in this small southern town, they are welcome there. And so they've been doing that work. And now even with their pastor leaving, that one of the first things, they said is they are looking at how to listen now as they move forward. They are doing some deep listening and thinking about design and coaching. And I was able to connect them with one of our other Vinery church that it's in a similar place around transition. And so I would say some of the success is seeing people take these principles and not just, well, that's part of our Vinery work, this kind of siloed approach, and are listening and making big decisions around pastoral transitions and hiring people that fit the vision and believe in the vision of university ministry. That's just not, well, that's on the list. We want someone to fulfill these other key pastoral roles, but that hiring someone now who believes in awakening faith and flourishing at the intersection of church and university ministry is actually a priority in their pastoral searches. And I feel like that is a success, that it's really changing the culture of their congregations to prioritize it.
I think that another one I'll throw out is, another church that we work with in Virginia had been sort of, I wouldn't say, they just were kind of plateaued. They were just kind of flat and having, 15 to 20 students, in varying levels of involvement, but not terribly consistent, not terribly vibrant. And they're basically across the street from fraternity and sorority row. And, sometimes they find beer cans and whatnot in their front yard and all that stuff, and sometimes people are like, those doggone college students, right? And this past year, the pastor of the church actually had gone and invited some of the different fraternities and sororities across the street, just had sort of called on them and said, if you guys are ever looking for a place for church, come on over. And then they had some other folks do the same from their church. And then they had the church has done some cleanup of some things on their street. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, there was this sort of like fraternity who started having some guys volunteer at this after school program. And then tragically, there was a car accident, and either 2 or 3 of the fraternity brothers from this particular fraternity that was not terribly far, just catty corner from their church, were killed in a car accident. And folks from that fraternity came and asked this church if they could have the funeral or a memorial service for these students at that church. And then like it just sort of goes from there. And so now they've actually been asked to do a host of other things on campus. And the Vinery lead team, I met with them about 10 days ago, and they said, it seems like we're kind of becoming the university church, not just a university church.
Wow.
And so we've had these opportunities. And so, I mean, that's to me a success story of there have been collateral good things that have come out of just them paying attention to their proximity neighbors. And, their pastor's been invited to speak on campus, and, they've hosted other dinners and things at their church. And, and 2/3 of that, 3/4 of that is not because they designed a program, because they were leaning into paying attention to what the Spirit has been knitting in terms of connectivity between them and their university neighbors. And so anyway, there's half a dozen others. We don't have time for all that, but there are other stories like that are kind of percolating throughout this process.
Well, thank you so much, Rhymes, and thank you so much, Alexis, for this conversation. And thank you, friends, who have joined us and participated in the chat. And I hope and pray that those of you that have joined us today, and even those that will watch this as a playback, will discern and pray and think about entering into this process, this 2-year commitment, submitting your application, your proposal for your church to be a part of the Vinery. This is important work. It's necessary work. I am grateful that the Vinery exists and how it blesses congregations and colleges and universities all across this country. So thank you both for what you do. And I am grateful that you have extended welcome to me to come and be a part of your January program when you bring congregations together. And I think last year when we did it, there was a brand new cohort and a cohort that was already in process there at the same time. And so having the chance to witness that interaction between the new folks that are coming on board and the people that are already in process was just so rich. So thank you for what you do and this awesome service that you provide for churches.
Well,
Any last words or comments before we sign off?
Well, I'll just say we're grateful that you exist, Reverend Tony. You, Dr. T.
I'm not Reverend.
You've been.
Watch that. Watch
sorry,
that.
Dr. T. Sorry. We're grateful that you and your ministry exist and has blessed us in lots of ways and blessed our ministry through the Vinery in lots of ways. Yeah. Your leadership is appreciated. So many folks pull you aside at these gatherings and say, well, what about this? And how do we do this? And so anyway, we just appreciate you so much. Appreciate you opening us up to this community of folks online tonight, and just encourage anybody to apply, get in the mix, join, reach out, send us an email or something to let us know you're interested. Tag us or like us on the socials and help us to connect with you and your churches, and let's find ways to collaborate to flourish in ministry with university neighbors. Alexis.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tony, for having us and getting to share about this work that is important to me and to Rhymes and our team, and would love more vibrant, hospitable churches to apply. And I'm always open for a conversation. As Rhymes said previously, sometimes the conversation is part of the discernment. And so there's a church that we recently accepted that I started a conversation with 2 years ago, and they weren't quite ready. Actually, 2 churches that just applied, and they needed some time to prepare. And we've just been in contact. And so I am always delighted to be in conversation with churches that want to think more about this work or learn more about the Vinery. You can send me an email, alexis@thevinery.org.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Alexis, Rhymes. This has been great. I'm going to leave this recording up on my Facebook pages and also on my YouTube channel and my ministry Facebook page, which is the Call to Worship group. There you can find it, and feel free to tag others and make them aware of this recording, and get those applications in. September 15th, is that correct,
That's right.
Rhymes?
That's right.
September
Soon
15th is the
the
preferred
better.
deadline. So please go to the website. Please be in touch with Rhymes and Alexis if you want to talk with them about uh, the process and what's all involved, and get those applications in.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
Dr. T.
a great Sunday evening, and I look forward to the next time that I bring somebody on. I'll be back on in 2 weeks, actually. I think it's on the 29th of August. I'll be interviewing a colleague of mine who is preparing for a Carnegie Hall performance.
Wow.
And she is soliciting participation of choirs from all over the country to come together to meet her at Carnegie Hall in June. So I'll be back in 2 weeks with that conversation. So look out for the flyer and the e-blast that will announce it. All right.
Exciting.
All right. Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you. Good
All
night.
right. Good night.